Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show. We've got a lot to talk about on today's show. We've got some big returns. We've got some trade news, all kinds of stuff, some injuries as well. God, this time of year, injuries are brutal when they happen right now. We got to talk a little bit about Giannis Antetokounmpo, what's going on there. A lot to get into on today's show. If you're not a subscriber yet, make sure you do hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Follow us over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. And, of course, go check out our Substack, too, the Basketball Bulletin. I'm going to put the link in the description down below. Keith, Goonies never say die. And that's the motto that I'm taking after a brutal stretch of 2 games of injuries for my Lakers.
Yeah, that was a rough one
say.
last night. As we were talking about before we started, yes, AD being out obviously was a crusher, but you're just not going to win a game when you get outshot from 3 like that in the NBA. That's how the league works now. Like it or not, if you get outshot like that, good or bad, you're either going to win or lose the game. Like that's just teams cannot make up that drastic of a difference there. And it's it was when Draymond Green went 5 for 5 in the first half, I was like, oh, this probably isn't the Lakers' night here. Kudos to them for making it close, and they were there for most of it. I think the final score's a little misleading, but yeah, man, just a brutal loss. I mean, in the West standings, I mean, both conferences standings, it's like every day I'm like, well, maybe we'll get a little bit more clarity. I guess we kind of did. Seems like Clippers, Mavs are locked into 4-5, pretty close. And we had a couple teams now tonight, I think, can get short of being in the play-in tournament. So we do have that part of it going on, but man, we still like 2-3 games left for all these teams, and there's just so much to still be decided. It's crazy.
Yeah, a lot still up in the air. Keith, as you mentioned, the absurd shooting from the Warriors in that game. This stat blew me away. So this is from ESPN. The Warriors shot 64% just about from 3.
Yep.
And that is the greatest three-point shooting game in NBA history on a minimum of 40 attempts.
Yeah.
There have been 3,400 times that a team has taken 40 three-point attempts in NBA history. 3,400 times. What the Warriors did was the greatest percentage in any of those games, in any of those 3,400 games. When Draymond Green, of all people, is hitting 5 of 5 from 3, you know it's going to be a tough night, and that's what happened. That's what happened in that game. And of course, we'll see here. Anthony Davis's injury, illness, kind of walking the line between both of those things. Apparently, LeBron's illness, just terrible timing for all these things to happen for sure.
Yeah, it sucks that it happened in that was game 80 for the Lakers, right? That you just throw your hands up and say there's nothing we can do. I mean, like you said, the historically greatest shooting night ever. There's nothing you can do. Like even had AD played, it probably doesn't make enough of a difference. He's not defending all of those, because the reality is you want Draymond Green shooting those
exactly.
Now maybe by after he's made the first 4, maybe at least half-heartedly run out and get a hand up. But yeah, it's just I mean, just one of those nights. So your team made not great history last night. Did you see the Celtics? Not great history last night.
I know there were only 2 free throw attempts in that game,
and the Celtics didn't take either one of them. First time ever in NBA history, a team's not taken a single free throw in a game.
Crazy.
And the Bucks took 2. Then that kind of tells you all you needed to know about the intensity level of that game.
Right.
Early on, there was some legit contact both ways. I thought Giannis, Chris Middleton, Damian Lillard got fouled on some drives. Tatum and Brown, I thought, got hit a couple times. There was one where Drew Holiday clearly got whacked in the head by Brook Lopez, and the refs were just, nope, you're going to play today. Like, we are not calling this. So that was a bit much, but by the time the second half rolled around, it was really, hey, we're not there. But let's get into it. That is by far the secondary story that came out of that game last night. Giannis, if people didn't see it and you're just kind of catching up here, or you know what happened, but you didn't see how it happened. He literally inbounded the ball, walking up the court, just went down, and then was sitting on the court, grabbing at the back of his calf. And we all know anytime you see a guy non-contact grab at the back of the calf,
Mhm.
our first thought is that was the Achilles. News this morning is not the Achilles. Achilles is intact, but it's a calf strain. We have not gotten any sense of severity of calf strain or anything like that. But this is minimum he's out for the rest of the regular season, and then very likely probably limited, maybe out to start the first round of the playoffs.
I mean, that's brutal for a Bucks team that's already been, struggling. They've dropped some games against teams that are just frankly not good. Um, so now potentially no. I mean, a very weak East just gets weaker here potentially with no Giannis Antetokounmpo, especially if he is out for any portion of the playoffs. That could wind up being a big problem, depending on who's there. I mean, Milwaukee. I mean, a couple of games left. They're probably going to finish in the 2 seed, or I guess 3 games left for them. They're going to
It's
finish
tough
in the.
though. They've got two with Orlando. Like those are
That's
still
true. I
pretty
forgot
big
about that.
games. So yeah, one of
They
them
could
tonight.
slide. If they
Yeah.
wind up, if there's no Giannis and they somehow wind up matched up in round one, like if they slide and they wind up against the Cavs, or if they wind up somehow against the Knicks or something,
Well, what if they
and they
don't?
don't have Giannis
They
for a
get
couple of games,
Miami or Philly,
sure. I
right?
mean,
Like out
any
of
of
the
those
play.
really.
So let's put a pin in that real quick because I
Yeah.
want this is the question. Well, not a pin, but I'm gonna ask you a question I asked on Twitter. And I
Okay.
asked it two different ways. That was my fault. I should have asked it one way. So, but I'm gonna ask you both ways. So out of the Cavs, Magic,
Mhm.
Pacers, Heat, Sixers, Knicks. So those are really the realistic playoff opponents for
Sure.
Milwaukee. Can't play Boston. I no offense to the Bulls or Hawks. I find it kind of hard to believe they're going to get through the play-in tournament,
Sure.
but we'll see. So those are the 6 teams the Bucks could play.
Mhm.
First way I ask the question is, how many of those teams do you give a chance of upsetting the Bucks to? Second question I asked, slight rephrasing, is how many of those teams would you actually pick to beat the Bucks? And
Okay.
let's assume Milwaukee has home court advantage in any of those series, regardless of what the seed is.
And Giannis is out?
The premise is Giannis is either out or he's limited. Think of it. Remember
Okay.
last year with the back, tried to play in game one, couldn't really go, then missed the next couple games. That put him behind the Heat, and the series was effectively over. So think of it as similar-ish to that. Like Giannis is that limited or can't play.
Without Giannis, I don't think Dame is Dame anymore. I don't
Okay.
think Dame is. If he was, I'd be way more comfortable. I think all of those teams would have a shot to beat them. If the Knicks have a healthy OG Anunoby, I think they could do it. I think the Cavs can certainly do it, but that team's kind of sputtered recently. Uh, I'd actually feel I think most confident in Miami, who's the 8 seed right now.
And they've done it
And,
before.
and they've done it before. And then Philly, and then New York. Of course, assuming if you want to throw Orlando into the mix too, I think Orlando would also beat them. So I think they probably lose. The Cavs, for some reason, something's off with the Cavs. So I'm not confident that the Cavs would get it done. And then the Pacers, you need to be able to defend to win in the postseason, and the Pacers don't. So I'm not super confident the Pacers would beat them either, but that's not to say the Bucks defend well. Man, I think they would probably lose in most of those matchups if Giannis is not available.
So to probably the surprise of no one, I I'm pretty much on the same page with you. I think it is I would go with for sure. I think the Sixers, the Heat, and the Knicks would beat them.
Yeah,
I think I think all of them could. So
I would
that's the
take the
easy.
Magic too.
Magic, the tough thing is I don't know what their offense is going to look like in the
Sure.
playoffs. And I think you're still going to have to score some points even without Giannis to beat the Bucks. I think honestly what the Bucks do then is say, all right, we're just probably not going to defend anybody. Let's try to outscore teams. And maybe that they stumble into something that way. So Magic, Cavs are just weird, man. Like they are just playing such a weird game. The puppies here. Playing such a weird like they're just not playing well right now. Really have struggled recently. And then the Pacers, you said it, they don't play any defense. So that's the hard part for them. So I think I would still pick the Bucks to beat the Magic, Cavs, or Pacers. But Sixers, Heat, or Knicks, 100%. I'm picking them if Giannis can't beat Giannis in the first round.
Yeah. Yeah. And we would be looking at, like, what do the Bucks do? Because last year it was so shocking that they bounced in the first round. If it's 2 years in a row of first round and out, what happens?
I honestly don't know because you don't have a lot of places to go to,
Yeah.
right? You're not going to trade Giannis unless he says, I'm done, get me out of here. And
Right.
I'm not willing to say that's going to happen. You just traded for Dame, so that would be weird. Uh, Maybe you move Chris Middleton. Like it would almost have to be a Chris Middleton trade because remember, this team's up against or over the second apron. So they can't like put together Portis and Connaughton to go get somebody.
Right.
They're going to be so limited in the things that they can do to improve this roster. It's really draft pick and minimum signings, and that's pretty much it. Unless you say what we really need is more depth, we're going to move on from Chris Middleton. Problem there is, I don't know unless you're taking back some mid-range contracts that teams are just like, man, we shouldn't have signed these. We don't like them. I don't know
Mhm.
what you're getting for Chris Middleton at this point. He's hurt a lot. He's clearly not the same player on both ends of the floor. So it just turns into, I think you probably just have to kind of ride it out. The bigger question, if they, let's say they lose in embarrassing fashion in the first round, let's say it's like 4 or 5 games or even 6, but the losses aren't competitive,
Sorry, Bucks fans.
right?
We're piling now. Now you're losing in embarrassing fashion. But sure, yeah. Then what?
Do you fire Doc? And then now you're paying
Didn't they?
4
Oh
coaches
God.
because you're paying Bud, Griffin, Doc, and whoever you hire to come in. Like it hasn't gone well under Doc. Like they've been bad. They're like I want to say 500 or below with him as the coach. So I really don't know where you go from here. But I don't know that you can just run it back.
They're going to get a 3-1 series lead over the Knicks and lose.
Oh man, then like, can you imagine?
Oh
Twitter will
man.
have a field day
Oh my
with
gosh.
that if that's the way it goes. Yeah, I
Keep
I really don't know where this is gonna go.
a lot of this to me though comes down to what do you believe about Dame? I was just thinking, if I could get a time machine and not even go back 5 years, just go back to last year and
Mhm.
get that Dame, I'd
Sure.
feel a lot more confident about the Bucks surviving any of those matchups. He's just not the quite. He's not bad, and maybe he gets hot and wins a game or 2 games or 3 games. Who knows? But
Sure.
he's not quite that same level, and that's
Yeah.
the issue I think with
Eh,
or one of the big issues with the Bucks right now.
I think a lot of the stuff with Dame is 2 years ago, he was really bad. Like,
Yeah,
couldn't shoot. Everything kind of fell apart on him, but he was hurt. So we all knew, like, that's what caused this. He had that core muscle injury he talked about. It was just constant pain for him. The challenge now, I think, for him is there's this is a poor shooting season. He was very good last year, but this is a pretty poor shooting season. And there's a couple kind of tells here that are jumping out. The last, let's see, the last 4 years he was with the Trailblazers, he was over 50% or better of his shots came from three. And he's one of the best off the dribble 3-point shooters. This year, that's dipped just a little bit down to 49%. Now, from last year, which was almost 55% of his shots were 3-pointers, that's a huge difference. And that tells me he's not creating the separation he needs to get to the 3-point jump shot. The other problem is he's a good finisher at the rim for his size. He's just not great. He's just
yeah,
not one of those ones where you're like, oh my gosh, this guy is, absolutely an incredible three-point or finisher rather. And his free throw rate has started to dip too. So you add it all up, he's just not the same offensive player. And if you look at his game logs, yeah, there's some monster games in there. There's just a lot more 3 for 17,
yeah.
6 for 20 type shooting nights in there that those are just rough nights, and they just simply aren't built to overcome that without Giannis. Like they might be able to for a game or two
Sure.
if Dame's off. Maybe somebody steps up. We've seen Bobby Portis have huge games. Maybe it's the game where Brooke Lopez goes nuts. Maybe Chris Middleton kind of finds it and summons it and rips off one of his 40-point nights. But man, without Giannis, it's going to be tough. And it sounds like, I mean, I don't know when. I think this is going to be one we're going to be angry for the next week and a half, 2 weeks,
Mhm.
because we're not going to get any kind of real update. It's going to be, well, we'll see, and then it'll be questionable, probably right up until they have to do the final update before the game and things like that.
Well, and speaking of which, is that and that's another good topic to bring up, and maybe not even something that we have in our show notes, but I mean, the Clippers have done this in the past with Kawhi,
Yeah,
where they very clearly know something's wrong with him. They know what's wrong, but they will not say it. Um, if we're going to get the same thing with Giannis, why is that different when we get to the end of the season? Whereas the beginning of the season, any other part of the season, this would be a violation, right? For not divulging what's going on with the player and what the player's status actually is. The Clippers have done it in the playoffs in the past. They might be doing it again right now with Kawhi. Who knows? If the Bucks are going to do the same thing with Giannis, well, maybe they might know he's out for a month and they'll say, well, he's day to day. We'll see next game, take it day by day, that kind of stuff. Why is that permitted if a team knows a player's out?
yeah, I think it's just really hard to prove, right? Because you can always go with, hey, we hope. Now that we're eliminated, or we're essentially eliminated, sometimes is the
Right.
way this goes. All right, we're shutting the guy down. He's going to have surgery, and that is a real thing that does happen.
Sure.
Sometimes guys try and try. Like I think back to Kevin Garnett in 2009. It was all the way through before the Magic knocked them out of the playoffs. It was, I don't know, maybe KG, and then finally the Celtics are like, look, he's not coming back this year. Like we're shutting him down. And yeah, the Kawhi one really stands out because I think we all know they knew a couple years ago. It was that Jazz series where it really stands out to me of, we know he's not coming back. Like, what are we doing here? We're just messing around with calling him questionable. We all saw what happened. Like, we all have our doubts, but yeah, I think it's just very hard to prove. Now, what becomes very interesting is we're only a week or so away from people are going to start piling a ton of money into playoff bets. And if the NBA is going to be pushing this, and we know they
Yeah.
will be, you it's hard to push this as a partner to these gaming companies and then say, yeah, but our teams aren't going to be forthright with their injury reporting. I don't care for the gambling standpoint at all. I'm not going to place any bets or do anything like that. I just care from the covering the games.
Yeah.
I would like to be able to know, hey, I'm covering, I don't know, Bucks 76ers. And as we're setting up and preparing for it, all right, I can base my analysis around Giannis isn't going to play or Giannis is going to play. As
Exactly.
it stands, we're going to be having to do two versions, right? Of everything to do with Giannis is going to be, well, I like the Sixers if Giannis doesn't play, but if he does play, I like the Bucks. Like that's going to be the conversations we're going to have. I can already see it. That's going to be you and me here next week having that conversation once those matchups are decided.
100%. And that's the frustrating part of all that is that kind of stuff is going to be permitted because it's later on in the season. Whereas I think there would be an issue with it if a team listed a player as day to day for
Yeah,
2 months and or listed him as a game, because that's what it's going to be. It's going to be a game time decision, right? Because they're going to use that as a strategic advantage. But if a team was doing that in November or December, the NBA would have a problem with it.
sure. Yeah, I
So
think I go two places with this. I think a lot about the NBA does a good job. Like the 76ers, we didn't cover it because it's kind of a minor thing, but they got fined for Joel Embiid uh basically messing around. But that was he was out and then played.
right.
That one I think they have far more uh like they get far more upset about. And that one you can clearly say, wait a minute, he had the dude ruled out till 5 o'clock and then all of a sudden he's playing.
Yeah.
Whereas I think teams are far more likely to say, hey, they're questionable. Like it wasn't the NBA, but the NFL. Tom Brady famously with the Patriots was on the injury report every single week because the Patriots got fined one time because it was, hey, you're not being forthcoming with the injury report. So then they, in the NFL, listed basically like 40 dudes one week with some form of injury, and they were all questionable. And that turned into, all right, what do we like? That's making a mockery of the thing. In the NBA, the Heat got in trouble, and the Heat turned around and listed all 15 guys on the roster as questionable. So it kind of is what it is with
Yeah.
that stuff there, where you got to be there. But that's why I think teams do this more and more. It's questionable, questionable, questionable to playing. Well, that happens every day. That
Yeah.
happens with some player somewhere. But yeah, it's going to be a definitely there'll be some watching of that, and we'll find out, like, do we believe it, do we not believe it? And I've even seen some people say he's not really hurt, they're tanking to avoid the Sixers. How? They don't know where the Sixers are going to be. Like, Sixers could still be the 6th seed.
Yeah.
Like, they don't they're not tanking to avoid anybody. Like, I that gets into the galaxy brain stuff, where it's like we talked about the other day. It's like that meme from Always Sunny, where it's like, all the strings and all the crazy conspiracy theory stuff. Like, that's just, that's not teams don't do that unless they can really feel assured that they're gonna get somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And always the as I fix my background here, that's always the frustrating part. And with all of this, again, you want to know who it is that's playing and who it is that is not playing.
Yeah,
But anyway, we've got a ton of other things to get into. So
yeah.
let's go.
Let's get into a couple guys who are coming back. Yeah,
There we go.
great
Carl,
news.
he will be back. Now he's not playing tonight against Denver. He's not going to play tonight, but it sounds like this weekend is very, very realistic for him to get back, which is great. Get back, get into a rhythm, that sort of thing. And then Trae Young is going to return for the Hawks as well. So that's
Potentially tonight.
yeah. So that's going to be great to see happen and have these, these talented young players get back out on the floor, especially ahead of the playoffs. Now, again, I'm not expecting the Hawks to make a run or anything like that, but the Wolves, this is huge for them to get him back, get into a little bit of a rhythm, just kind of get back into the swing of things. Then he can practice a little bit after the regular season ends. We'll have a little bit of a gap before the playoffs start. And so this could be big for Karl Anthony Towns too, at the very least, knock off some of the rust. If not, maybe help the Wolves secure the 1 seed. That could happen here as well.
Yeah, absolutely monster game tonight between the Timberwolves and the Nuggets.
Mm-hmm.
Even if Towns isn't playing, and it sounds like he's not going to. Timberwolves right now are up 2-1 in the season series, so they could lock that up with a win, the season series record. And when you're up, when you have the tiebreaker and you'd be up a game with only 2 games to play, you're in pretty good shape to then lock up that part of it. Now the Thunder are going to have something to say because they can still force their way in there. Nothing would be done, but that would go a long way for whoever really wins out of Minnesota and Denver towards locking up the 1 seed, which is huge. And the Wolves have more than hung in, right? We talked about it and said, oh, you just hang in there, while Cat is out, and hopefully you can get him back. Well, they've continued to play basically just as well as they had all along. They play differently. They're not quite as good as they were before, as far as beating teams by a lot of points and the like. And they've leaned into some different kinds of lineups and in that, but they've played really, really well. So this is absolutely huge for them to get him back, and before this monster game. And this is worth kind of noting because I've seen a lot of people saying, what is the schedule like down the stretch? Well, for every team, we've got today, meaning we're recording this on Wednesday, we've got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday games. Nobody plays Saturday. The entire
Yeah.
league is off Saturday. Then everyone plays Sunday. Every single game Sunday is a like conference matchup, except for Pistons Spurs, which doesn't matter. Like that, they're both woefully out of it, and at that point, it's probably going to be they've maybe even locked into their lottery positions by the time we get to Sunday. So it's that's where we're at. So handful of teams have back-to-backs today. A couple have a back-to-back Thursday, Friday. And then we're going to be in a spot where we get the where Sunday, it's just everybody comes in and everybody, no one will have played Saturday. So no back-to-backs. It's going to be let's go right into that last day. So it's going to be really fun to watch all this as we just kind of get there with all of it. Like it's going to be awesome down the stretch here watching all these games. Everybody's got 2 or 3 games left, so we're right down to it now.
Yeah, my background is cycling through logos now. It's having a mind of its own today.
All right, we're getting a taste of all things.
That's right. That's right. It's a little sampling. It's like when you go to the ice cream shop and they give you the little wooden spoon. You know,
there
you
it
can
is.
try a few different things. There you go.
If you play
this
it right,
is gonna
then
be
you can buy a smaller sized ice cream because you've already eaten enough through just the samples.
Keith. You know what is terribly sad and tragic. Um, I am stuck with frozen yogurt. I cannot eat ice
No.
cream. Yeah.
You
It's
lactose?
Yep, yep, and
Uh,
it's not a fun time. It's not a fun time. And so we go out for ice cream. My daughter, my wife, they get ice cream, and I just get left out. Makes me
do you have
sad.
a
Makes me
Menchie's
sad.
near you?
I don't.
Menchie's is like it's frozen yogurt, but it's like that frozen yogurt that it's basically ice cream, and then there's nine
Right.
million toppings you can throw on it. So like I know people are like, well, I like the yogurt because it's more healthy, and I'm like, yeah, but then you piled hot fudge and marshmallow and 500 cookie pieces on top. Like
Still
healthy?
counts.
What
Still
are we
healthy.
doing? Yeah, right. It's like Homer with the rice cake. Only 30 calories or
That's
whatever.
right.
But he's got 500, pieces of ham on top of it and all this other stuff. So
Oh,
yeah, that's yeah, wait, yeah, there's yeah, man. I've always said if I one day wake up and I'm lactose intolerant, that's just end it. Like if I can't eat ice cream, I'm out. Like
it's
there's
ice
no
cream
real reason to
specifically, and just like if I tried to drink a glass of milk, those things like cheese, okay, no problem. It's ice cream specifically, and if I tried to drink like something that's very heavy milk based,
keep.
forget it.
So no
Um,
milkshake for you either.
No, yeah, no milkshake, nothing like that. Yeah, that's no bueno. Yeah, so that's not a good time. But yeah, I mean, you go get your frozen yogurt or whatever, you pile in all the toppings, and next thing, and then you put it on the scale and you weigh it.
Yes.
You do that thing, and then it's extra embarrassing because you're like, oh my god, how many
Yeah.
toppings did I put? It weighs how much? What?
Yeah. Enjoy your 4 pounds of crap. Like
That's
have fun
right.
with this. Yeah. Yeah, I've been there. That's the same with like anywhere where it's like make your own salad. And it's like,
Oh
oh, I'll have
yeah,
a salad. This is healthy. And then next thing you know,
it's
you
a
have a
piece of lettuce
2 pound
piled with
salad.
bacon bits.
Yeah. In like a bottle of ranch. It's like, here
Yeah.
it is. Salad. Yay. Some croutons. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I hear
Ron
you.
Swanson when he had to eat the banana and he just put it on
Yes.
it. He put it on a burger, on a giant
Yes.
paunch burger.
And then
All right.
I remember it. I think he bites and he's like, not bad.
Yeah.
Bananas.
That was
Like
his only
it's
way
like, yeah. Oh,
to get
so
it
good.
down.
It's so good. All right. Second
All
guy,
right.
Trey Young coming back. Maybe
Yes.
tonight. We'll see what that means for the Hawks. Probably better to have him than not, I guess. We'll see. But that leads us into this topic from our buddy Mark Stein, and others are speculating as well. It's either going to be Trey Young or DeJounte Murray this summer. And I think we're probably all there. Right. I mean, we know they tried to move DeJounte Murray this year. Like that was a known thing. It just didn't happen. Now it's going to be which direction they want to go because DeJounte
Yeah.
Murray's played really well with Trey Young out, and then what are they going to do? With Trey Young back in the mix. Do you trade him? Who gets you the better return in terms of overall return here? And well, what does it look like? So that's that. Trey Young could be like the biggest name star to move via trade this summer. I mean, it might not even be that close.
Yeah, I agree. I think that first of all, from the Hawks' perspective, I think moving one of these guys makes sense. I think it doesn't work. I think they gambled that on this idea that a two-guard backcourt would work. Somewhere David Kahn is smiling, but this is not. It's not an experiment that has worked out. So you got to move on from one of them. So if I'm the Hawks, and we've talked about this, I'm putting them both on the market, and then I'm laying it all out on the table, right, or on the proverbial whiteboard that you can take a picture in front of, and you want to lay out all the offers, and just compare them and say, hey, look, if we go this, we're probably going to get more by trading Trey than we would by trading DeJounte Murray, but we can get this, this, and this for DeJounte. We can get this, this, and this for Trey. These are the offers that are on the table. And then you pick a direction and you go. Because I don't, since they both play the same position essentially and everything, it's not like you have to look at it and say, well, if we trade this guy, we're building out this way. We trade this guy, we're building out this way. Yes, there's differences between them as a player in terms of what you want to add in shooting and defense and all that sort of stuff. But you really can just kind of go, okay, well, we're going to trade away this one and keep the other one. And that's what we're going to do. So put them both out there, see what kind of offers you get coming back. And then you make your decision from there. Now, the Hawks, from a star power standpoint, from butts in seats standpoint, are probably better off keeping Trey.
Yeah.
But he also makes a lot more, and he's also going to return a lot more. So that's going to be interesting to see how all of that plays out and what the Hawks ultimately decide to do. Oftentimes, too, Keith, we look at this. You and I look at this. Fans in general will look at this and say, oh, well, we can get this, this, and this in return, or you can get this, this, and this. I like that this is 2 firsts, or this is 1 first, and it's this player that comes back, that player comes back. You have to remember the added element from the organizational standpoint is how much money are we going to make or lose if we do this? And that's going to be a factor as well. And that's why I bring up the Trae Young star power component to this and what this can mean for ticket sales, what this can mean for TV viewership, for all that sort of stuff, because that is going to be a big factor in the decision making as well. I'm not saying that means they keep Trey, but it's an angle that most of us don't consider when we're looking at, we just look at, you win this trade, you lose this trade, whatever.
That is a great point, because at some point, usually right at the end before it's deal, is ownership says yay or nay on every trade. And it's some owners give carte blanche if it's like, hey, if it's even money and it's guys at the end of the bench, whatever, right? Like, we're swapping a big for a guard because it balances us. They might be like, yeah, you're fine, do your thing. Especially with like guys who've been doing it forever. So like, I don't know that if Pat Riley wants to trade Haywood Highsmith for a backup point guard, he's gonna have to go get ownership approval. I think that's probably gonna be okay. You know, do your thing. You've been doing this for decades. You're fine. If it is, I want to trade Jimmy Butler, that becomes a whole different question. Yeah. So in this case, obviously, Trae Young is the Hawks franchise guy. He is the biggest franchise guy they've had, I would say, arguably since Dominique Wilkins. Like, they had very good players. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they had that wonderful team where, remember the one year it was like all 5 guys were the player of the week because they couldn't like pick like who it was. And it was like, what was that? It was Horford, Millsap, Korver.
Oh, yeah.
Was it Joe Johnson and Jeff Teague? Maybe it was that group. Yeah. It was something like that. But it was that whole collection of guys. Like, that was the talks were good at that point. So it's like, but as far as true star power, it's Trae Young, and that's going to matter, because there is a world where, hey, we're better, we're winning more games, and less people care because we don't have the nightly show of the guy who might go for 60 tonight, so we're just not as interesting. So that's going to be the tough thing. But as you said, could return a monster trade package, and this could be kind of almost your get out of jail free of, let's really clean up the salary sheet moving forward. We've eliminated that $40 to $50 million contract. We're now in a spot where we can really reset this roster around Murray, around Jalen Johnson, and DeAndre Hunter, and Bogdanovich, who signed, and Okongwu, and then go add other players with the assets we get back or whatever. It's going to be really, really interesting. But I think all of this reporting is pretty spot on. One of the two is going to go. They would have to, Trae comes back, they rip through the play-in tournament, pull off a first-round upset, and they're playing great for this not to be a thing. And I find it extremely hard to see that coming.
Yeah, agreed. I think that a move is indeed on the way here. And the quite one of the big stories of the summer is going to be, which one is it? Who's going? Who's going to be traded? And then where are they going to? Keith, I've got an eye on the Spurs. I think the Spurs could go after either one of these guys and make a real push. And then, oh boy, they would be off and running next year.
And that was a little easier because
Mm-hmm.
Spurs can offer the Hawks back their own picks that they gave up
Exactly.
for DeJounte Murray in the first place. So you could say, hey,
Want
we're
my
going to
picks
give you
back,
back your
all of them.
picks plus David Putney and some pancakes. Yeah, I'll give you back your picks plus we'll throw in a pick or two on top of it, and off we go if that's where they want to go. And Trae Young, Victor Wembanyama, that's a pretty good start. You know, you're in a pretty good place there if you're moving forward with that as your kind of twosome to build everything else around. I think you can make that work.
Keith, you mentioned Kyle Korver and the Hawks, and I've got a little Kyle Korver story here. So last month when I was traveling and we did some shows from when I was in South Carolina, I went through Atlanta, was the airport that I flew through. That was my connecting flight. And I'm walking through the airport and it's super busy, right? It was, for a lot of places it was spring break and everything. So it was super, super big. Airport is just slammed, right? And I'm walking through the airport and super busy. And suddenly there's a dude walking past, 20 feet away, going the other direction. That's a full head taller than everybody else. And I had been in my phone. I'm checking messages, all that kind of stuff. And I just glance up, and as he's walking past, I go, "Oh, that's Kyle Korver," right? And so he's walking the other way, and this is in this sea of people. And it occurred to me, I'm like, how many like NBA guys could be walking through the airport right now that's this busy and not have people recognizing them and saying that he just walks along with everybody else, no problem, nobody coming up to you. I'm like, this is kind of like a mini version of John Stockton in Barcelona, where he was the one guy who could go out amongst the crowd. I just thought that was cool that Korver can walk through the airport in Atlanta. I'm pretty sure it was in Atlanta anyway, where that layover was. Too many flights,
which would make sense because he works for the Hawks.
Right. So, but then he just can walk through, no problem. Nobody, nobody's going, "Hey, Kyle," it was cool to see.
Yeah, well, maybe they thought it was Ashton Kutcher, and they were like, "All right, we're good." Remember that was a whole thing for a while.
They're like, "Oh, no, it's just Ashton."
Yeah,
Forget
it's just
it.
him. We're good.
We don't want to
So,
talk to him.
and let me correct something just since we're on the topic. It was not Joe Johnson. It was DeMar Carroll was the fifth guy in that group. So that year, the year they made the Eastern Conference Finals and lost to the Cavaliers, it was Paul Millsap. It was Al Horford, Paul Millsap, DeMar Carroll, Kyle Korver, Jeff Teague, and then their main guys off the bench: Dennis Schroeder, old friend Kent Bazemore, Mike Scott, Pero Antic. Remember when that was a thing for a little bit?
Oh yeah.
There and Thabo Cephalosha. Those were kind of like the big guys off the bench for Atlanta that year. So good Hawks team. That was one of the kind of last all right, no great players here, I guess. Well, I don't know. I guess a couple other teams have been that way, but good run for that Hawks team. 60-22 that season.
Wow.
Record, and lost to the Cavs. Unfortunately, swept by the Cavs in the East Finals as the Cavs moved on to the to the NBA Finals to lose, I think, the first Warriors title, right? 2015, if I remember correctly.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a few stories left to jump through here. Billy Donovan committed to the Bulls. Doesn't sound like he's going to be taking the Kentucky job. Everybody's going to be asking who's taking that job. So Billy Donovan saying, "No, I'm not going to." I think I'm paraphrasing, but he said something to the effect of, "I like coaching in the NBA, or I like coaching, and I really like coaching in the NBA." That was his way of saying, "Yeah, I'm not going back to college."
Yeah, there are college coaches who have had had success in the NBA, rarely ever want to go back to coaching in college. And it's not for lack of opportunity, because Billy Donovan's had offers. The other famous one in recent years was Brad Stevens. He's had offers to do it. And the reason why is they don't want to deal with all the nonsense stuff of the NCAA. And now it's with the transfer portal and NIL and all this other stuff. It's just become an even harder job for coaches. So these guys are just they're not going to do it. They just don't want to do that. So they're going to stay in NBA jobs, and it makes sense. Not to say Billy Donovan might never go back to college, maybe 4 or 5 years from now. And I get it. People are going, what success has he had? Well, he coached some pretty good Thunder teams, for a while there, and the Bulls I think the Bulls have been about exactly what we expect them to be. with Billy Donovan in charge, and that's not that. I mean, it's not necessarily on him that they're not better. Like
Sure.
I don't know how much I would put it on him. So yeah, not surprising at all. I'm curious to see where Kentucky does go. I mean, that's obviously one of the glamour basketball jobs in the world. So we'll see.
All right, then we've got Rob Dillingham and Isaiah Collier declare for the draft. So
Yeah,
as my background goes out again for some reason, I think I'm just going to leave it
I
at
like
that.
it though. It's a pretty picture. That's very
It's
nice.
it's just the screensaver background there
I
now.
get it, but if we could like lock that down for an on-location show, like a castle in the clouds, let's go. Or that
Okay,
beautiful beach right now. I'm
let's
all in
go.
that
Let's
too.
go to the beach. Yeah,
Hey, I'll
why
do it
not?
from that bridge, wherever that may be. Um, I yeah, we are not going to cover every declaration for the draft because there's
No.
going to be hundreds of them. These are two guys who are probably going to be top 10 picks. So we're gonna when it's the big dogs get mentioned, we're gonna cover it here. So Dillingham's considered to be by many one of, if not the top guard prospect. That'll obviously be decided over the next couple of months leading up to the draft. Then Collier, at points in times, he was the number one player on a lot of draft boards. Had some struggles, had a rough year. We'll see where he goes this down the stretch here as far as being where he lands through the draft process. But probably another guy's probably going to be close to a top 10 pick. So that's why we wanted to cover off on these guys.
Yeah, so I mean, these are guys that are going to be. I mean, they're going to be lottery picks. We can debate how good this draft is or isn't, but these are guys that are certainly of note. And while we're mentioning that, I do want to also mention that we've got um, there we go. We've got over on the basketball bulletin. We have our scouting reports
Right,
from Bryce Simon. He's already got Isaiah Collier up there. There's a Rob Dillingham one up as well. So you guys can check that out. I'll put the link in the description down below for the basketball bulletin, which you guys can definitely check out. It's going to be a very, very valuable resource heading into the draft. All of these scouting through the eyes of a scout looks at a lot of these top prospects. So I'm really excited for what Bryce is putting up over there. So again, you guys can check that out over on the basketball bulletin. Check the link in the description down below.
Yeah, this is great stuff. I mean, we've been talking about it for a while now. Bryce continues to crank out. We were actually talking about like, all right, we probably got to get some content up there ourselves because Bryce is just zipping along. But yeah, I mean,
He's
great
lapping
stuff
us.
from him. He's definitely lapped us. So it's like way past us. But yeah, he's got great stuff up there. So consider signing up, and we'll go. Bryce and I went back and forth a little bit. I think we're gonna do a kind of a big board debate kind of thing where
Uh-huh.
we're both going to kind of go through our big boards and kind of do almost like a back and forth type of thing where it's like, hey, let's, who do you have number one? Oh, I have this guy, and go back and forth because for a change, I am fairly versed on a draft class in April instead of cramming it all in the first part of June and hoping I don't miss somebody by the time we get there. I feel pretty good on most of the prospects in this class.
All right. That's going to be me. I'm going to be the last minute crammer. That's
We
what
got you.
usually is with the draft.
We've got you covered.
All right. And then we've got Keith, you had something on this. The Grizzlies, their season, how many players have played for them? And then you apparently you've got some sort of other interesting stat you want to throw at me here.
All right. So in the pandemic years, we were like, man, this is ridiculous how many guys have been on these rosters.
Yeah.
The 23-24 Memphis Grizzlies said, hold my beer on your pandemic years. 33 players have appeared in a game for the Grizzlies this season.
Uh-huh.
33. There's 18 players on a roster at any given time, unless you have hardships. So we're almost double that. Like, it's absurd. 33 guys have appeared in at least one game for them. The nugget from last night's game, they had exactly 8 healthy players, which 8 is the minimum you have to dress. Thankfully,
Uh-huh.
all 8 could play. Of the 8, 6 were at some point on a 10-day contract with the Grizzlies.
Wow.
One was on a two-way contract. Others are on two-way contracts now, but one, Gigi Jackson, was on a two-way contract to start the year. The only guy who's been on a standard contract all season that played for them last night was Brandon Clark, who missed up until about 2 weeks ago, missed as he recovered from an Achilles injury. Like,
Grizzly
I don't even know
indeed.
what you do with that. Like, that is
Yeah.
crazy. Like, this is, I know you do Memphis or radio in Memphis. I do radio in Memphis every week. I actually do a spot. I know you do it pretty regularly there. I always say I'm not playing to the crowd, but it's anytime any team starts whining about injuries, the Grizzlies fans are like, I don't want to hear it from you. Like,
Right.
get all the way out of here with anything you've gone through is nothing like this. Like 33 guys, and last night, every guy who played was not available on the roster on a standard contract at the beginning of the year. I don't even know
Unbelievable.
what you do with that. That's
And Des Bane, the Grizzlies announced yesterday, it came out that they're shutting down Des Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. for the remainder of the
yeah,
season. So,
which I
which
mean
obviously
makes
the season's only a few more games, but still,
yep,
yeah, I mean, crazy
yeah,
injuries that the Grizzlies have dealt with. But they're also the team that I think is going to have a big bounce back next year
yep,
because they're going to
yeah.
get their guys back. But they've had everybody either hurt or suspended this year. It's been truly a lost season for Memphis.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when we sit down in late July, early August, September, and we're talking about next season, and we're like, all right, who can make the biggest improvement? We're going to have to caveat it with we got to take the Grizzlies off the board because otherwise that's an easy pick, right? It's going to
Yeah,
be, oh yeah, they're probably lock them in for a 20 game improvement over whatever they finish this year. Like I was thinking about it just the other day. It is in a lot of ways, it's remarkable that they have 27 wins. Like
sure.
they could win 30 games, which is not nobody's going to stand up and cheer for a 30-win season, but like they with all of that, they could be down in the Pistons Wizards area and haven't been. I mean, they've hung in and they've been kind of a pain in the neck to play for some teams too. They play very hard. I think Taylor Jenkins is a very
Hmm.
good coach. Some people are very frustrated, but I look at it, I'm like, really? What do you want him to do with rosters that are 2-way and 10-day guys? Like he's coaching half a G League team out there, like every night. Like I don't, I'm not sure anybody would do better with that.
I'll tell you what, if this was, I mean, given the state of this draft class, it's not as big of a deal. But if this was like a Wemby year or a Zion year or whatever, people would be really upset with the Grizzlies
Yeah,
for taking a season where they've dealt with all of this and still they've got what the seventh best odds of getting the number one pick or something right now. Yeah, they're seventh in the tank race. They, I don't know. I wouldn't be shocked if they wind up moving their pick, but man, if they endure all of this pain and then again, you mentioned all these positive qualities about them, but if you were to miss out on getting the guy in this disaster of a season because they won a few too many games, I think you'd have a lot of fans who are frustrated. But given the status of this year's draft class, I think they're probably going to be okay.
yeah. The Grizzlies fans that like really follow this stuff and are really into it, they're hoping for either enough lottery luck to go get Alex Sarr or
Hmm.
they want to get Donovan Clingan because
Yeah.
that's kind of the one position that they have is really of need. I think people are starting to lose the plot a little bit with small forwards covered now. We got Vince William Jr. and Gigi Jackson. I like
Yeah.
if you can upgrade small forward, let's still do that. Like those guys are nice players. I think they're going to continue to be nice players, but yeah, man, they're in a position to be pretty tough next year. So I'm excited to see however it all plays out for the Grizzlies over the offseason. I mean, I'll say it about all 30 teams multiple times, and I'm excited to see what they do. But that's just how I get about the offseason. I love the potential of what could they
Endless
do, and then I love
possibilities.
breaking down what they do.
Yeah,
Do do.
and that's part of why we go so crazy when something unexpected happens, like a 2:30 a.m. Kevin Durant trade or whatever. It's like, what? This really happened?
Yeah.
It's an exciting time. It's an exciting time for sure. That when we do get into the NBA offseason. So, all right, Keith. Meandering show today, but we touched upon a lot of topics, all the way from the superstars returning to action and potential trades to ice cream toppings all over the place and back
And the
again.
Goonies.
And the Goonies, never say die. But we do appreciate everybody for joining. Make sure you do subscribe to the NBA Front Office Show on YouTube. Don't forget to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts as well. Till next time, we'll see you and stay safe.